steering wheel, the whole kit and caboodle. I went with that because the interest rate was super low. I've got a Ford Bronco now, and the Ford Bronco said this morning, not or 5 degrees, 5 degrees, but don't call it a heat wave because I think it's going to get up to a high of 24 degrees today. So I'm very excited about that. The house was actually warmer yesterday. We got it up to a nice, cool, comfortable 67 degrees. It's hard to heat houses, especially when you got some older windows. And yeah, it's tough to keep the heat inside. All right. So we've got so much to talk about here this morning. Good morning. Biden celebrating Trump's Iowa landslide. The way he's celebrating is by calling all of us MAGA extremists. So we're going to chat about that here on the Morning Buzz. I might actually get back to the lawsuits that have been filed against President Joe Biden's candidacy for the Illinois primary ballot. The lawsuits that have been brought forward are incredible. Terry Newsom and some other Illinois voters like Peggy Hubbard, Shane Bouvet, they have brought forward a lawsuit that alleges that under the 14th Amendment, Joe Biden has given aid or comfort to the enemies through his open border policies. They also go into detail the exhibits. So there's different exhibits about the $75 billion worth of military equipment and weaponry left in Afghanistan for the Taliban to use against who? Us. So, the lawsuit alleges Joe Biden took an oath to support the Constitution 9 times as a U.S. Senator and as a Vice President. And yesterday I told you guys, hey, the Senators, the Vice President, they actually take a different oath of office than that of the President. So they're doing the same thing to Donald Trump in states like Colorado. The Secretary of State in Colorado said, screw you, Colorado Supreme Court, we're going to put you on we're going to put Trump on the ballot anyway. There's states all over. Maine, there's actually there's a lawsuit against Donald Trump here in the state of Illinois that uses the 14th Amendment as well. There's an argument to be had if the 14th Amendment applies to a president, because the president does not take a pledge to support the Constitution. In 2017, you can go look at the oath and listen to it. U.S. senators, however, they specifically vow to support the Constitution. And the language in the 14th Amendment talks about, hey, if you take an oath to support the Constitution and then you either participate in insurrection, rebellion, or treason, essentially, which is the providing aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States, then you have violated the 14th Amendment and you cannot be on the ballot. I don't really like both of these cases against Donald Trump and Joe Biden, because I think it sets a nasty precedent where we can just say people committed treason and them not be charged with it and have due process in the court of law. This is like removing them from it. We're skipping a step here, folks. We need to first prove that Joe Biden committed treason, and we need to first prove that Donald Trump committed some sort of insurrection. We can't skip that step. When you prove that in a court of law, then you can go and try to argue the 14th Amendment case. Yeah, so there's a separate objection. Beth Finley Smith, she's an Illinois voter. She's a LaSalle County District 4 board member, and she is seeking to remove Joe Biden from the ballot in a totally different objection. So this one I love. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's really neat because I'm kind of nerd when it comes to state statutes and Illinois law, because there's a lot of things baked into the cake that you, me, we don't know about. And Smith, she knew about this one. Okay, so the crux of her objection actually lies on the notarization of President Joe Biden's statement of candidacy. So candidates, they have to make a statement of candidacy, and then they have to have it notarized. Well. Joe Biden, his statement of candidacy was notarized by a notary commissioned in the District of Columbia, DC, instead of an Illinois official, which is mandated. You have to have it notarized by an Illinois official. That's according to state law, as I read it. Um, and I love it. I asked Beth Smith. You guys can read the entire article on cities99.com. It's up there at the center square. Support us and support Center Square. You can find it on cities99.com. But yeah, so I was talking with her and I said, okay, why not object to President Trump's petitions or statement of candidacy? Because his was also notarized by a notary commissioned out of Florida. And she goes, look, I didn't pull Trump's petitions. And she goes, it was a bit of strategy that I had to use here. I filed my objection on the last day to file objections. So that way the other side did not have time to file an objection on the same grounds that I filed my objection on. So I really like this objection because it's pretty cut and dry, but who knows? Illinois courts, she said that they filed. One thing also about that objection that I kind of like, there is an Illinois case. It's Jackson Hicks versus East St. Louis Board of Election Commissioners. Now, there was a ruling in 2003. The Illinois Appellate Court actually removed this candidate from the ballot due to his statement of candidacy not being notarized by a notary commissioned in Illinois, but rather it was notarized by a notary commissioned in Missouri. So kind of insane. Today, Wednesday, at about 9:30, I'm very excited about it. The ballot certification or there's an Illinois State Board of Elections special meeting concerning these objections. So I'm going to assume that the Illinois. Here's what I predict the news on this program. I bet the Illinois State Board of Elections for both of these objections, when it comes to Joe Biden, they're going to shoot him down. But then um, the plaintiffs, I guess, are going to appeal. They're going to appeal that decision by the Illinois State Board of Elections, and then it's going to go beyond them, and it's going to go to some sort of Illinois court. So ballot certification is expected on January 30th. So this is kind of a fast timeline. We kind of got to get this rolling here because early voting, I think, is sometime in February. Because, folks, we have an election season now, not an election day. The primary in Illinois, the official primary date is March 19th, but we do something called an election season nowadays. So glad I ran through that. There's so much I want to get to today. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. One thing that I want to get to today, Chicago bragging about securing millions to expand EV infrastructure. Okay. Now they're dealing with the cars not charging in these winter temperatures. Yes. So you've got JB out there touting all of this millions of dollars that he is spending your money, by the way, because remember, the government is not a business. They don't create a product. They don't sell that product. They take money from you and use that money for things. They are not in the business of selling, making a product. They don't make money. They take money. Okay. So Chicago, they're bragging about, getting these millions of dollars from taxpayers. And then now the cars aren't working. So yeah, we're going to chat about that. Biden, like I said, he's celebrating Trump's Iowa landslide. Once again, labeling all of us as extreme MAGA Republicans. So much and more here on the Morning Buzz. I'm going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the EV infrastructure expansion and how that won't even really do anything. Okay. These people, you got Governor J.B. Pritzker out there. He's doubting, what was it? It was $14.9 million to support the expansion of these EV charging infrastructure right here in Illinois. But what's the point of building charging stations if you can't charge your car at the charging station? I don't know. It's unclear. But what is clear is that the left and Governor J.B. Pritzker have not a clue about much of anything. I'm back next on The Buzz.
The news is being brought to you by Tax and Accounting Plus. Focus on growing your business and servicing your customers while
92.9 Sports.
And this is El Donzo. I'm Deez. And don't forget to tune in to the El Donzo and Deez Show, the redheaded stepchild of Cities 92.9, every Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m., brought to you by EnviroSeal.
That's right. We're going 2 full hours now of the latest in local, national, and worldly news with our own little humorous spin on it. You get twice the bad news and twice the bad jokes right here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal.
Mark Levin here, and I'm live on Cities weeknights at 5. You won't want to miss a minute of the show, so download the app and stream Cities all day long. Cities 92.9.
You're up, cat.
What's new, cat?
I got cat class and I got cat style.
Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Yes, coming up in just a little bit, we will be talking about how Illinois lawmakers, you won't believe it, 4417, House Bill 4417, get your witness slips out, ready to go. They are considering legislation right now that would take away from basic teaching, math, reading, and they want to allow their union friends to have a platform for union recruitment and indoctrination. Literally, they're going to have a 1 week a year dedicated to union reps coming in and indoctrinating your kids to be a unionite. And like, this isn't fair. This is a bill created as a, hey, thank you for all the millions of dollars you continue to send our way. We're going to get to that story here coming up in just a little bit, but you know him, you love him. Jesse Faber, he's running in the Senate District 53rd. It's the 53rd Senate District. Am I right, Jesse?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, I've talked to a few candidates in that district. I haven't even gotten to all of them. Mike Kirkton, Chad Burke, and then there's a woman whose name is escaping me. I'll find that for you guys. But I haven't gotten a chance to sit down with Jesse. He's from Pontiac. And tell me a little bit about yourself, Jesse, why you wanted to get into the race.
No, thank you so much for having me down here today, Kat. I really appreciate it on a cool day and getting to be here in studio as well. So thank you for this opportunity. As you mentioned, my name is Jesse Faber, and my wife Mary and I, we live with our 9 and our 11-year-old on our farm just north of Pontiac. And for those that go up the interstate, it's right there along the Interstate 55. And we really enjoy our experiences there. My children are the 6th generation to grow up on the Mackinson Dairy Farm. We also have some beef cattle and enjoy being in the livestock business an awful lot and spent my entire life in that. Also, this is my 18th year of teaching. I teach high school agriculture and FFA. I had 1 year over at Eureka High School before I had the opportunity to teach with one of my best friends in Pontiac, and I've been there ever since. And so those are some of those things that I do in that space. I also am the 4-H livestock judging coach for the McLean, Livingston, and Woodford County livestock judging teams, and really enjoy that. I enjoy coaching my son's Little League baseball team. And I think as we talk about why do I want to get into the race and where's that experience come from, this is, as some know, and many that have already visited with me, this is the first time that I've put my name on a public ballot. I've been involved in Farm Bureau for my entire life, heavily involved in young leaders who have been on the County Farm Bureau board for over a decade. And about 8 years ago as well, on the ag education side, started working on a legislative effort. And through that part of it, I've had the opportunity to help in the drafting of bill process, I've testified in front of both the Senate and House committees, worked bills, been through the budget process down in the Capitol in order to help address agriculture issues, and particularly agriculture education issues, and getting to see those pieces. And I think that I can bring that experience to be a great senator for the 53rd District and for Republicans across the state of Illinois.
Yeah, well, it's a huge agricultural district. It's a big district. It's got, Ford, Will County, I think, McLean County. Is it Livingston County?
Yeah, so there's actually 13 counties. Now, 3 of them are just a few precincts. And so when I say that, 3 of them are just a couple of precincts that are in the district. It's the vast majority of Livingston, Ford, Iroquois counties, It's about it's a weird pie-shaped chunk here of McLean County, but we get some of the outstanding communities like Lexington and Hudson, and then we come down, and I was actually walking this weekend in some cold, sunny weather in Normal and some of those neighborhoods as well. Goes up and catches most all of Marshall and Putnam counties. I think I said Woodford, a chunk of Tazewell over in the city of Washington,
Mhm.
some LaSalle and Grundy, and a little bit of Bureau, Peoria, and Will County as well. I think in Will County, it's the town of Godley, for anybody who's familiar with that one.
Hey, I know where Godley's at. I love Godley. That's my hometown. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, because you're a teacher, is this bill that's going forward. It's House Bill 4417. And I know you probably haven't gotten a chance to read it, but it's brand new. It's this Workplace Readiness Week. And the name sounds like it might actually help some Illinois students prepare for the workforce. But then you look into it and I don't know. What are your thoughts about, and I'm sure we have an ag week in schools. I don't know, maybe not in high school. You would know better than I do because I'm not a teacher, but it sounds like, and I just know this because, I've got a youth group. I bet kids don't know what they should. If they're Illinois kids, teens, they should know way more about agriculture than they do. How do I know this? Because I graduated in 2017 and we never talked about agriculture. I took one class, maybe in college, and I didn't learn enough in that class at ISU that I think that or at all that it would help me if I ever decided to farm or, get a dairy farm, get a corn farm, nothing like that. My parents are farmers. My dad, he had grown up on a farm, corn, sweet corn. I remember going out there, picking the ears and selling it. We would sell it at a little farm stand or in the back of my dad's truck, right there on our property. And, but yeah, so your thoughts about, why are we distracting from things like agriculture, things that would actually help in the real world? And we're instead, pushing things like comprehensive sex education. That was SB 18 or something
Mhm.
like that. And then we've got this bill where I don't know. I think it looks with information on issues such as how to organize a union in the workplace. And that's, I don't know. I think that it's not a nonpartisan. It's not partisan. If you've got a week dedicated to teaching kids how to unionize every year in high schools, it feels like union propaganda.
Yeah, and I would obviously, I haven't seen the direct language on that bill yet, but I would, with what you're describing there, I would agree. Oh, sorry about that.
Mhm.
And we talked about this cold air this morning.
Hey, I've
Um,
got or what is it? I call it say bones in my coffee. When I drink and I get froggy, I'm like, I got bones in my coffee.
no, that's
what I always
but
tell my listeners. Live radio.
yeah, live radio, but sorry about that. And so as I look at it, you're exactly right in terms of the what are we teaching? I think that what we teach in our classrooms, and I think one of the things that gets a little bit misnomers from time to time is that I have a tremendous amount of control within my classroom. I have great support from my local administration and from my school board to allow me to teach the topics that I think are important to help students connect with agriculture and where
Mhm.
their food comes from. Because in my mind and what I teach in my classroom and what I've worked to help spread to other classrooms and other schools across the state of Illinois is first off helping people understand where their food comes from.
Mhm.
I think that's really important, and I think that our schools need to be reflective of our communities. You won't. I don't know that you'll find anybody that gets out of their classroom with their students probably as much as I do. Where we go to local businesses, we go to local places, and I help to show my students here's what it looks like, not just in a textbook, but here's what it looks like in the real world.
Hmm.
And so I get really proud about what we do there. In fact, and I
Yeah.
talk about things that prepare me to be a great senator for the 53rd district. Is one of the statewide projects that I've helped to lead. Is right now we have being piloted in schools across the state of Illinois is a biology curriculum that's centered in agricultural context. And so the idea is that students will be able to learn about all the biological sciences through agriculture, and with that being able to work with additional requirements, additional prerequisite things that are coming down that are making it harder and harder for students to have choice and families to have choice in what they're taking in high schools. And this is a little different approach to that because I think that it's really important. our students need to know. And across the 53rd district, you mentioned agriculture, and as I mentioned, like farming is extremely close to my heart, and I love it. And this morning woke the cows up a little bit early to do chores so I could get down here. But it's beyond that. We are in the 53rd district. I think we're the number one ethanol producing district in the state of Illinois. We have 2 ethanol plants, one of which is the number 1 employer in Putnam County. We have soy crushing facilities where they're processing and making soy oil that's being used for biodiesel as well as cooking oil. And we have 2 of those facilities, with the 3rd one being built right now. Like the agriculture economy is not just, as you mentioned, obviously love the farm, and you tell the story about the sweet corn. And I love my own students that are thinking entrepreneurial about starting businesses, and a couple of those that are doing that. But it's not just that, it's also the agribusiness side, it's the agriculture processing side, it's the food processing side. And I mentioned food processing because some people don't realize just how much food processing there is around here. Obviously, there's the big chocolate plant right there along the interstate. But when you get up in some of these other counties, I think it's something like 75% of the North America's Kix cereal is processed in Gridley, Illinois.
Oh, wow.
And I think the 2 number 1 employers in Marshall County, one of them makes cookies, and one of them is in the pasta space where they do packaged pasta. So if you ever get the Bernardi's packaged pasta in the freezer aisle, you're supporting the town of Toluca, Illinois, and they've got their food processing plant there. So as we talk about that and those jobs, and go back to your original question, I think that students need to have opportunities to see what the careers are and where they can go and what it looks like in the real world. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And so any additional requirements coming out of the state that puts additional requirements that take away from students being able to learn things that are appropriate in for their communities and what their communities, school boards, and towns suggest is best, I think that I would definitely push back on.
Yeah, well, and I think that proficiency, and I just pulled up the numbers real quick talking about Pontiac High School, and I've actually talked about Pontiac because it's kind of sad because their reading scores are really low and their math scores are really low. And it's what I got the numbers here, 16% proficient in math, and then in reading or ELA, English language arts, we've got 22%. And a lot of these rural communities like Pontiac, right? I lived in Dwight. It's kind of more rural than Bloomington Normal. And although we have a ton of money dumped into our students here in Bloomington Normal, they're a little bit better. Not much, but a little bit better. But I always thought that, my rural school, I went to Braidwood. And I was like, oh, well, they're doing it much better. The kids aren't on top of each other. They've got, smaller class sizes and teachers like you. But what is that? What is going on where the kids aren't reading or reading and doing math at a proficient level? Like that's really low. If only 16% of the kids in Pontiac High School, 9th grade through 12th grade, can do math at grade level, I think that's low.
Well, and I would say that right now, and I guess I'll even let you know on this one, as we've talked and addressed that and talking about on a faculty level, we're putting things in place to help address that. As I say that, there's obviously been some changes in the world the last few years, and we've had what we saw was a huge achievement gap. Like the achievement gap really widened, and we saw those students that had the different opportunities and different pieces, or took them in a different work ethic approach, whatever the causes of it were, really address that. And so I think now there needs to be a concerted effort back to make sure that we're having that. I'll use another example, something that is brand new, and it kind of goes along these lines, is that one of the things that our school did implement here in the last couple of years was a geometry and construction class. And so we're helping students who perhaps learn better that way. And so the real world context and going out in the carpentry and construction world, and of course it's being co-taught to help enhance students' mathematical skills while also doing so in a context that is very hands-on for them, as well as that skill building. And I think as we look at education, being able to contextualize what we're doing with it is really a big push that I have, and something that we need to continue to work on with that. To make sure that we're addressing it and giving students the supports. One of the things that I think we've learned through research and other things is just saying, hey, it might not be working, so we're going to do more of the same. We've realized doing more of the same doesn't necessarily create different efforts. And so we have to reimagine a little bit and provide those supports that help meet students where they are, to make sure they have the skills to go out when they graduate.
I do want to switch gears on you.
Okay.
Because I know that you got to get back to the farm. The cows need you. The cows need Jesse Faber. We're talking with Jesse Faber. He's a state Senate candidate for the 53rd district. It's the large district, Marshall, Livingston, LaSalle, Iroquois, Grundy, Ford, Bureau counties. Now, I want to ask you about this. I got a press release, had Mike Kirkton in, asked him about his petition challenge coming from you. So let me just ask, why challenge his petitions?
Well, I think that I appreciate the question. I think that what it speaks to, and I know that that you're a big fan of election integrity as well, and making sure that that's something that we talk about. And so I guess I step back and talk a little bit more about my campaign because, and there's a reason to that, is that I started, and this was the first time that I passed a public petition. So we got out there right away in September. And I think that if you saw me anywhere but in church and in school, I probably had a clipboard in my hand because it was really important to me to do that work. And as I did that, I had different people that were telling me different and giving me advice as we went that said, make sure you get a whole lot more signatures than what you need because they're going to get challenged. To the point that I had someone who had a lot of experience in the field who said, you can either do the work on the front end or you're going to have to do the work on the back end defending those petitions. As I say that, by the time we got there to Thanksgiving, I turned in over 1,800 signatures. In the same situation, I had people who I know that we had our petitions requested by others, and they went through my petitions. And when it came down to it, I was really proud that obviously they didn't think that there was a reason to object to mine. And because of that, we just moved on with our campaign. Other people have other options on how they want to run their campaigns, but I think that it's important to have checks and balances as we go throughout. And I know, I think even in the last couple of days, maybe even this morning, you were talking about some of the different challenges and objections that were being filed. Is I think that we need to have a process that makes sure that we have integrity in our elections. For mine, made sure we filed over 1,800 signatures and made sure that there was no concern, and really proud of that as we move forward with our campaign.
Yeah, and Mike Kirkton did admit that he had substantially less. I forget exactly how many. I think that you need. How much do you need for you to get onto the ballot?
We needed 1,000.
1,000. Yeah, and I think he had slightly more, a few hundred more than that. So, but you petitioned. I haven't seen this, and I said this. I haven't seen this where a Republican goes after another Republican, where you go after the signatures. A lot of times what I've seen is people will go after like, hey, page numbers, or, your address wasn't correct on your petition or your nominating papers. And you go kind of after the process and not necessarily the signatures. What Mike Kirkton would say and said when he was in studio was, hey, you're going after the integrity of those people who signed my petitions. A response, comment?
Well, I think there's two parts. And one of the parts that I'll say on the Republican, and this is the deep-seated conservative values that sit with me. I think the very first one sits is personal responsibility and the work to do it. And so for that, I took personally responsible for my petition signing, took very much responsibility for knowing how they needed to be filled out and what we did. And even as I say that, my personal goal was that I got over 1,200 of those signatures individually myself. And then some other folks who were helping me, we got up over 1,800. As I say that, I think one of the reasons that you don't see, in my case, and I think that it was across the board, I think that most, if not all, Republicans, especially those in a contested race, somebody's pulling those petitions and going through those signatures. Most of the time, they don't get challenged. There's not objections because the Republicans do the work to make sure that they have enough signatures on there that there's nothing to object to. When I look at it, at least from my understanding in the situation you're mentioning, is that the candidate turned in 100 extra signatures and had, or just over that, and had over 100 signatures tossed out because they weren't in the district or they weren't registered voters in the 53rd. And I think that it's important in our rules and in our policies about, it says that we need to have 1,000 of our voters, Republican voters, in the 53rd Senate district in order to be a candidate for the 53rd Senate seat. And those voters deserve the integrity of making sure that they're the ones that put a candidate on the ballot, not just that somebody gets on there, whether they're in the district or not. And in the case, I think the number was 7 more than the 1,000 required, and so on the ballot. But in my own race, I wasn't going to leave it up to what my choice was, to go significantly more than that and make sure that there wouldn't be an objection to it.
Interesting. Well, thank you for answering my question. One more thing. I know you got to get back to the cows, but yeah, we've here in McLean County, and your district is in McLean County, a little bit of it. Our county board shot down a carbon sequestration pipeline. Now, I've gotten all kinds of pushback on this from those in the agricultural community because they really like the carbon sequestration pipelines. Now, I have concerns about it. There was a case, I forget where it was at. I think it was in Massachusetts or something, where one of these things burst. And if one of these things burst, it could lead to all kinds of illness, sickness, fatalities. This is where they grab carbon
Mhm.
and then they capture it and shove it down into the ground for storage. Now, people are like, Cat, well, you're not upset about, pipelines, natural gas pipelines or anything like that. And those could burst. But here's the thing, we benefit from that. That's energy, natural gas, right? Pipelines. How do people actually benefit from carbon sequestration? Because really, I mean, the only people who benefit from it is people who love ethanol, these ethanol plants, and, it emits carbon. And then we store that carbon and we shove it down into the ground instead of letting it go out. It just kind of feels like a scam. But I want to know your take and tell me what I don't know, because I know that a lot of farm guys are for this, and I hate to say it, maybe it's because it's not because it's green, but it's because it's green. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know why storing carbon underground is a great idea. It just feels off, right?
I think it's a fascinating issue, and I think this is the part of me, and as I say that, this is the part of me that is, as an agriculturalist, as a teacher, as someone who loves science, and so I almost hope, and that's why I need to be careful that I don't just go kind of science nerd a little bit on some of what that looks like, because I get fascinated by things like geology. I get fascinated by things like what we're talking about here, and to me, there's two significantly different issues in what you just brought up. Even as I've gone through the campaign process, and been across the district. There is the carbon sequestration into the ground, and then there's the pipeline issue. To me, I view those as two separate things, because on the pipeline issue, I am a property rights advocate. I believe that people have their property rights, and I think that they need to be protected. I would push back on any increase in utilization in eminent domain. I don't like those words. Those are ones that I would absolutely push back on. And that's really what happens when we start talking about pipelines, I think, more than anything. I think that when that discussion comes through, that becomes one of the biggest pieces of it.
Mhm.
And so to me, I would be a vehement fighter for property rights of individuals. And so that's something that's important to me. And I know that it's important to people in the district. And it's not important to me because it's important to people in the district. It's important to me because that's who I am. But I think that represents also people in the district. When we talk about the actual going straight down in the ground with it, it's really fascinating. There's a lot of industries that produce carbon dioxide, and the biofuels industry is one of them. And I think a little bit because the process of producing corn ethanol isn't all that different than the process of producing corn syrup. It's not the exact same, but it's not significantly different because we get carbonation in our soda and our pop as well. And that's a little of how we capture the geology of it. And I've done some exploring, and I'm fascinated by the geological resources when you go down in the ground underneath central Illinois, and what that actually does and what that looks like. And so there's some pieces I look forward to continuing to learn a little bit more on it. What I've learned so far is really fascinating. There have been, and I use an example. There's soy facilities down in Decatur that have had wells go sequestering carbon since the 90s,
Mhm.
with no concerns. They have
I think they're ADMs.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Archer Daniels Midland down there is a tremendous employer, tremendous industry here in the state of Illinois, and they've had a well for quite some time. We've got there's a couple within the district of the 53rd that are looking. And to me, the greatest concerns that I hear aren't necessarily of the going down in the ground, because they're going down an awful long ways. We're talking a mile into the earth, which I had to drill a new well for my house in order to have water in my house. And I think we're down 500 feet, and that's a pretty deep hole to me.
Mhm.
And so the thought that they're going down a mile is pretty darn significant. Um, but they're going down a long ways through a lot of different layers. And so we could get into the weeds on the science of it just a little bit. That's really fascinating to me. We are really unique in Illinois in our geology that allows them to match it up there specifically. But I think that the concerns need to be heard. I think that we need to make sure that people that have concerns, and have a pathway and a process to make sure that they're heard. And if they are in an area where it is, everywhere here, the geology under northern Pontiac is different than the geology under south of Pontiac, is I think just about my home area. And so as you look at it, I think that once again, they need to be flushed out. They need to be transparent and open in discussions over what we're trying to do here, and do just that.
So you can use that carbon sequestration, that stored carbon, for something else, right? You can use it to carbonate pop.
Well, and so right now, that's one of the ways that they use, CO2, and I'll use another example, I think, on bags of chips. The atmospheric pressure in there, a number of them, some of them use nitrogen, some of them use carbon dioxide, but we're capturing some gases off a different process. We've been capturing carbon dioxide off the manufacturing process for years. This just happens to be a way that they're looking to store and dispose of it. And actually over time, with the geology that's in there's some chemical reactions that change it from CO2 when they do go down in the ground. But I'm not, I guess I say that I'm fascinated by the science of it. I don't want this to necessarily go that I'm an advocate for it.
Carbon sequestration.
I'm not really
interesting. My only thing is like, hey, let's use it, right? Because this whole, we're going to capture carbon out of there, we're going to shove it down into the ground, and then we're going to have a green climate, or it's going to dramatically improve the weather. Controlling the weather, when legislators start to control the weather, then I'm like, I don't like that, because no matter how hard you tax people, no matter how hard you try, you're never going to be able to control the weather. And especially this carbon sequestration thing, coming at it from a, green initiative aspect, it just doesn't make sense. Now, if you're going to use that carbon, that's actually being green. It's carbon that's already emitted. Let's take it, let's recycle it. Let's put it in the bags of chips. Let's put it in the soda cans, let's do something with it. Because if it just sits down there, then you're opening it up to disasters that you've had. I forget where it was, but there was an incredible piece done by the Huffington Post, actually, which I know you're like, Kat, you're siding with the Huffington Post on a story. Yeah, well, the when it's sitting there, the risk, I think, exponentially increases. But hey, Jesse Faber.
I do have to say this, and I know that we just went down that path. So I was going to, as I think about it, just as you talk about the farm country and we talk about the carbon dioxide approach to it, there is a part that wants me to go just a little bit of agriculture science geek for just a moment on that, because I think that it's fascinating. I think that from this conversation, you'd appreciate. I saw one of those satellite maps that was able to measure like photosynthetic activity, and it was like able to measure what was going on there. And over the Corn Belt here in central Illinois, you get the coloration for a couple of weeks every summer, where we're actually have as much photosynthesis, which is processing that carbon dioxide and making oxygen, is what's going on in the rainforest there for a stretch. Now, granted, it's not happening this time of year.
Yeah,
not a lot of it here in January. But as I tell my students in my classroom, I love corn. And if you live in Pontiac and Livingston County, and I'll say in the Senate 53rd, that, some appreciation for corn and soybeans and how they drive economic activity around here. I hope that everybody has a little bit of that, and I'm passionate about that, and love the votes for the 53rd.
Yeah. Well, and how do we find out more about you?
Yeah, fantastic. And I have a website. It is electfaber.com. And so at my website, you can find more information there. We're also got our social media activity up and going, which is another piece that I absolutely love. Our small towns and our small businesses. There are so many amazing food establishments all across it. And so we're actually doing some extra highlighting of places that we've gone. So I'd encourage any of you that like to go out and find a new restaurant or try something new. Go out. There's a lot of communities and small businesses. So Faber for Senate we have a Facebook page as well of Faber for Senate. So please give us a look, give us a follow, and we'll be out and about quite a bit here.
Awesome. Well, Jesse Faber, thank you so much for coming in studio, and thank you, listener, for tuning in each and every morning. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about House Bill 4417, a little bit more there, and then we'll also chat about Donald Trump winning the Iowa caucuses, and Joe Biden is out there and he's calling you a MAGA extremist again. Again, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You can find me and subscribe to my channel. That's Kat Peterson 99.
Cities 92-second news brought to you by
Menards. Save big money at Menards.
Last night's Bloomington's
riders and car insurance with Progressive and put the savings toward a new couch. Please, it's time. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company coverage provided and serviced by affiliates and third-party insurers. Not available in all states.
Do you hear that? Asthma triggers are everywhere, from dust mites, pet dander, and pollen to smog and smoke. An asthma attack can strike anywhere, anytime. Be prepared with quick-acting Primatene Mist. Clinically proven to open airways quickly. It's the #1 FDA-approved asthma inhaler available over the counter. Primatene Mist. Breathe easy again. Use as directed.
Yeah, you should have seen them Childers kids when the weather would start turning cold. #2 would always grab the hoodie. #5 busted out the long socks, but old #3 would be totally bundled up. And hey, speaking of bundling everything together, always remember that when you get a quote from those Childers kids, it's the entire price to finish the job. That way.
Woohoo! Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Man, this hour just flew by. Thank you to Jesse Faber, who's running for the Illinois Senate District, their 53rd. That's the 53rd Senate District. We're going to be back chatting a little bit about the EVs because the EV infrastructure, we're spending millions on it. And I don't know why, because the cars won't charge in the winter. So what good is spending $14.9 million on this expansion of EV charging infrastructure here in the state of Illinois? Governor J.B. Pritzker, I'm looking at you. What good is it if they can't even charge your car in the winter? All right, I'm back next. Hey.
left behind.
The lawsuit alleges Biden took an oath to support the Constitution 9 times as both a U.S. senator and a vice president and has given aid or comfort to the enemies of the U.S.
My personal views are, I hope the Supreme Court throws it out because it shouldn't happen. It's not a good thing for America. And if it doesn't get thrown out, it's a win-win for us. We have the same rights as the left does to hold Biden accountable for what he's doing.
The Illinois State Board of Elections will hold a special meeting concerning these objections on Wednesday, January 17th at 9:30 a.m. The primary in Illinois is March 19th. I'm Katrina Peterson.
News on the air, on the web, on your app, and on Alexa. I'm Tom Davis.
Cities 92.9.
A wind chill advisory until 9 this morning. Mostly sunny and breezy today with a high of 23. A slight chance of snow overnight and 17. Near 25. Colder Friday with a high of 10. You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest Central Illinois weather forecast, guaranteed. Rain, shine, or snow, it's your dependable weather on Cities 92.9.
From the Johns in Lexington studio. Don't be fooled by corporate preferred list. Tell your insurance company you chose Johns in Lexington, preferred by their customers, not insurance companies. Cities 92.9. The Morning Buzz with Kat Peterson. This is your hometown conservative talk show that examines today's stories through a brand new lens. This is The Morning Buzz, brought to you by McLean County Asphalt. They've been repairing driveways for more than 50 years. The Morning Buzz with Kat Peterson on Cities 92.9.
Oh boy, we've got to talk about it. Joe Biden, he's celebrating Trump's Iowa landslide by calling you and me MAGA extremists, MAGA Republicans. Okay, so he's labeling all of us extreme MAGA Republicans. We're going to chat about it. Plus, Illinois lawmakers, they're considering legislation here to take away from the time that we dedicate in our schools to teach the basics, to teach math, reading, writing, to teach things like agriculture. No, we're going to teach our kids now, according to this piece of legislation, about unions and how great they are. This is really just a way for lawmakers to allow their union friends a platform to recruit. Union recruitment, indoctrination. That's HB 4417. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. But first, no matter how hard the government taxes us, they will never be able to control the direction of the wind or sub-freezing temperatures. I got up this morning. It was a nice, cool, comfortable 5 degrees. Okay, no matter how hard they tax us, no matter what they do, no matter how much they legislate, there is no way they are going to be able to control the direction of the wind or sub-freezing temperatures in Chicago because of a little thing called winter. And there was a storm in the Midwest. You guys know this, a winter storm, subsequently charging stations. Because of this winter storm in Chicago and probably everywhere, have turned into electric vehicle cemeteries due to the fact that it's too cold to charge your vehicles. The charging stations just don't work. Okay, so all of this infrastructure that we do have, which isn't much, by the way, and, we just throw more money at it. It's not doing us any good because the charging stations don't work. Let's take a listen here to this local news report. Here we go.
That cold is also causing some big-time headaches for Chicago area owners of electric vehicles.
Yes, I never thought we'd say this, but it's true. As Dane Placco reports, the low temperatures have caused some headaches for owners looking to charge their cars.
Electric cars may be the way of the future, but it's clear there are some problems when it comes to charging them in Chicago's deep freeze.
Oh, we got a bunch of dead robots out here.
Dead robots. Dead Teslas packed the parking lot at this Tesla supercharging station in Oak Brook, a scene mirrored in other supercharging stations around the Chicago area.
Man, this is crazy. It's a disaster. Seriously.
With temperatures falling into the negative double digits, these charging ports have stopped charging, leaving many Tesla owners stranded here in long lines since Sunday.
Nothing, no juice. It's still on 0%. And this is like 3 hours this morning being out here after being out here 8 hours yesterday.
Has it been charging?
No, not at all.
It just isn't working.
At all. It's just frozen. And so I'm now getting it towed to the Tesla service center because That's my only option at this point.
Adding to their frustration, they say, is that they're getting no help when they call Tesla for assistance.
No response from Tesla. We have been suffering since yesterday afternoon.
These are unusually cold temperatures, but do you find this acceptable?
No, not at all. Not really. I think it's less on the actual vehicle and more on the infrastructure.
Tesla has not responded to our emails for comment, but an automobile expert we talked to said that the owners of all EVs should hit the battery precondition button on their car before attempting to charge it in extremely cold weather. In Oak Brook.
So, hopefully you guys heard that. I'm hoping that I came through on my end, but it was a news report from Fox Business, and they said that desperate Tesla owners in and around the Chicago area were trying to charge their vehicles, and they didn't have luck amid these frigid temperatures. And these frigid temperatures, they've been gripping the Midwest for quite some time. Okay, so these people are going without a car for about a week or so. Charging stations have essentially turned these charging stations have turned into what's called EV graveyards. Okay, so they're just dead. Nothing. There's no juice, 0%. That's what these Tesla owners are saying at this charging station in Oak Brook, Illinois. And this is a disaster. This is crazy, says one Tesla owner. Now, there are several Tesla owners. They were trying to charge their cars. These were long lines. People had to abandon their cars and get rides from friends because they couldn't stand out there in the cold. And look, wow, it might seem that we're not even close to being ready for Biden's EV mandate or Governor J.B. Pritzker's EV mandate. But facts they tend to get in the way. Facts tend to get in the way of the left's climate alarmism. So when do progressives decide when progressives decide they want to run the entire economy on solar and wind, it's quite obvious that they don't have a plan on how we run things when the sun goes down or when there's no wind. Okay, what happens? How are you going to run things on solar and wind? However, Democrats do believe they can control the weather if they just tax you an itty bit more. If I just tax you an itty bit more, maybe me as a legislator, I can figure out how to control the weather. So it would make sense as to why they give very little thought about these minor inconveniences where people can't charge their Teslas, which is pretty major, actually. It's not really a minor inconvenience. It's a major inconvenience where you can't use your car for an entire week. And the ironic part about this story is that this story about the Chicago EV Teslas not charging, Governor J.B. Pritzker just announced that the state has secured a grant for $14.9 million to support the expansion of EV charging infrastructure in Illinois. What's the point of building these charging stations if they don't actually charge the car? What's the point? That's unclear. Nobody's giving me a solid answer on that. $14 million. Okay, sure. Let's build all these charging stations. Okay, but will they charge the car? But what's clear to me is that the left has no clue about much of anything. They have no clue about anything. And on top of that, everything they touch turns to chaos. It's almost as if they want chaos. Oh, wait, they do. Look, EVs, they aren't the magic pill that the government has been hoping will control the wind in the Windy City, okay? This is not magical. Just because we push EVs on people and more people are in EVs, that doesn't mean that there's going to be less wind in the Windy City. That doesn't mean it's going to be any less cold. So EVs will not control the amount of rain the desert gets. EVs will not control much of anything but the more misery for the average American. Okay, EVs are going to cause more misery. I have yet to see a story that claims EVs have made anybody's life better. So rather than pretending that the sun will explode if we don't radically transform society back into the dark ages, maybe we should take a small step back. We need to stop screaming, the sun's going to explode. We need to radically transform society, and we need to transform it back into the dark ages. Let's take a step back here. And this shows how sociopathic the left is. They will completely ignore this story, probably label it as some sort of right-wing conspiracy. Oh, that's not happening. The EV charging stations, they're fine, and they'll probably demand more funding because the $14.9 million for these charging stations that don't work wasn't enough. They're going to demand more funding for something that won't do anything but cause inconvenience. This is going to be an inconvenience to everybody, these charging stations. To say the very least, an inconvenience. It might cause, I mean, those were frigid temperatures. You're stranded in frigid temperatures. You got to get a friend to come pick you up from that charging station. And for the millionth time, no matter how much the government taxes us, they will never be able to control the direction of the wind. All right. Do want to shift gears. I do want to talk about Trump winning the Iowa caucus. If you're watching, go ahead, smash the like button. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. We've got so much to talk about today. One thing I did want to hit was Trump winning the Iowa caucus and a landslide victory. And here's the thing. I was looking at some numbers today. I think Ron DeSantis, he spent $1,700 per vote. Okay. It was like $30 million or something crazy like that. Trump spent about half, way less than half, actually. He was spending about $340 per vote in Iowa. Money doesn't buy, your money does not compare to the authenticity. And look, people are energized about Donald Trump. People are energized about Maga first. And people are always upset with me. They're like, Kat, why do you go after Ron? Why do you go after Nikki? Why do you speak ill of a Republican? Look, first off, Nikki's not a Republican. Second, Ron DeSantis did this to himself. Nobody is disparaging him. He's doing it all on his own. Okay. He is an inauthentic and he's arrogant. He's inauthentic and he's arrogant. Okay, he hasn't even dropped out of the race yet, and Nikki has a much clearer path to victory. I'm not saying that she actually is going to win. They're going into New Hampshire, then South Carolina. She's got a much more of a lead, at least according to polling, over Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire. She's probably going to get the Chris Christie vote. Over there, Vivek, all of his votes are going to go towards Donald Trump. And Ron DeSantis, he's in this race for I don't know. I think that he's hoping that there's some sort of DOJ miracle where they knock Donald Trump off of the ballot. That's what Nikki knows she doesn't have a path to victory either. These scummy people, Ron and Nikki, they want to win off of these frivolous lawsuits, off of these attacks from the political opposition. The Democrats are weaponizing the DOJ and all of these different courts. There are prosecutors against their political opponent, which is Donald Trump. Okay. And Ron and Nikki are hoping that there's some sort of miracle where Donald Trump is prosecuted and convicted and just drops out of the race because he can't take it anymore. Okay. And if you come by your win in that way, you didn't really win and you're a scumbag. Okay. So I'm not going to feel bad for, speaking ill of a Republican because these people, they're sick. They want to win in a way that's immoral and wrong and against democracy. So this is just another example of that. Trump won Iowa caucuses in a landslide. Subsequently, Sleepy Joe, he lashed out at extreme MAGA Republicans and then asked for donations to his campaign. Okay. So the funny thing is, we all know Joe did not post this X post. He probably doesn't even know it was posted. He doesn't know what it says. And it's unclear if he knows Trump won because he's still probably sleeping, by the way. The ironic difference between Sleepy Joe and Trump is that Trump writes his own social media post. You can tell that. He wrote his own social media post. But here, I would not be surprised if Joe Biden doesn't even know what Twitter is or that Twitter is even called X now. But here's Joe Biden's tweet. Joe Biden, I'm using air quotes. Looks like Donald Trump won Iowa. He's the clear front runner on the other side at this point. Well, No duh. That's why you're weaponizing the federal government against your political opponent. You know that he's the front runner. Okay. But here's the thing. This election was always going to be you and me versus extreme MAGA Republicans. It was true yesterday and it'll be true tomorrow. So if you're with us, chip in now and donate. And then he provides a link for people to donate to his campaign. I've got to take a quick break, but you're listening to the Morning Buzz. We're going to continue this conversation here on the other side. And find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble.
Cities 92-second news brought to you by
Menards. Save big money at Menards.
Migrant spending.
Cat class and I got cat style.
Yeah, I'm not too shocked about this. Somebody texted me and they were like, "Kat, did you hear that Mboka Mwambwe, the mayor of Bloomington, he said that he's glad the community had a little talk about spending taxpayer money on services to illegal immigrants who could be bussed in here from either Chicago or could be bussed from Texas." He said that he's pleased the McLean County Board rejected the ban on using taxpayer funded services to house these migrants, to give these migrants money. He's glad and he wants everybody to know that Bloomington is going to be as welcoming as possible. Well, thanks, Dexter, for texting in and sharing that with me. I'm not shocked. I'm really not shocked. This is why I tell you get out of cities because guess what's going to come and happen and be at your doorstep, okay? It's our very own sound of freedom right here in the state of Illinois. There was a migrant in Chicago at the probably the Inn of Chicago, which is one of the biggest migrant shelters. It houses about 2,300 migrants. So far, 30,000 migrants have been shipped up to Chicago from Texas. But there's this guy, his name is Albeiro Vesquez Roman, 24 years old. He forced women into prostitution. He's at the center of a migrant sex trafficking ring where women were forced into prostitution and their families' lives were threatened. This all happened. These women were held at gunpoint in a Austin neighborhood. This is a few minutes away from Mayor Brandon Johnson's house. So Mayor Mboka Mwambwe, buddy, this could be happening at a residence near you. You want this to happen at a house near you? It happened to Brandon Johnson already in his neighborhood. It's just a few minutes away from his house. Well, here's the story. These women were held at gunpoint at a residence and they were forced to perform sex acts in a house just down the road from Mayor Brandon Johnson's house. You know what, Mayor Mboka Mwambwe, you must want that. You want that for the city of Bloomington. That's cool with me. That's fine. I'm not going to be here. Get out of cities. I tell you all the time, get out of cities. Get out of Democrat-run cities. Move to these red areas and make them redder. Get on the county boards. A Cook County judge denied Vesquez Roman release. No safety act for him. However, with the Safety Act, we're lucky, folks. We're lucky that he was not released because we have a little thing, no cash bail here in the state of Illinois. This guy could have been released within hours of him being detained for holding women at gunpoint and forcing them to have sex and forcing them to perform sex acts on people. This is a sex trafficking ring. Now, there have been upticks in open-air drug deals. There have been upticks in violent crime, theft, prostitution in Chicago around the migrant shelters. Okay, this is happening. And Mayor Mboka Mwambwe doesn't care. Mayor Brandon Johnson doesn't care because they want to be as welcoming as possible. Fine. I go to a county like Grundy County. Grundy County is a non-sanctuary county. And I talked with Chad Burke, who's running, by the way, for the Senate district, the 53rd district. And he told me, he goes, look, if I find a bus and if they stop at a rural truck stop and they start releasing migrants, we are telling them, hey, you're going to Chicago. We're going to put you on a train. We're going to move you up to Chicago. We're going to get you out of here. You're not welcome here in this county. And yeah. Well, I'm shocked. I wish I could say I was shocked. I'm really not. It's just, wow, blue cities suck. Okay, so I do want to shift gears. Let's talk about it. Before I took the break, I was telling you guys a little about Joe Biden. And like I said, I don't think he really knows what Twitter is. I'm sure he doesn't even know that Twitter is now called X. Somebody tweeted from his account and he says, looks like Donald Trump just won Iowa. He's the clear front runner on the other side at this point. Here's the thing. This election was always going to be about you and me versus extreme MAGA Republicans. It was true yesterday and it'll be true tomorrow. So the extremism of wanting our border secure, okay? And I'm going to ask Mayor Mboka Mwambwe this. Are you going to take the door off of the hinges on your front door off of its hinges and just allow them into your house? You want to be as welcoming as possible, Mboka? Okay. All right. Be as welcoming as possible and house them in your house. Why don't you do that? The extremism. But I'm the extremist because I want a secure border. I'm the extremist because I want to be able to afford food and a place to live. I mean, I'm basically an anarchist, according to the Post Millennial. After former President Donald Trump's victory in the Iowa caucuses, President Joe Biden, he lashed out at his primary political opponent. Looks like Donald Trump just won Iowa. He's the clear frontrunner. And then Donald Trump, by the way, he won by a large margin. I think it was like over 30 points near that. Candidate Vivek Ramaswamy dropped out. Now, Trump took a punch at Vivek Ramaswamy. That was a very smart political strategy. He knew that he had to take Vivek out so that way he could get his votes. And Vivek dropped out shortly after the Iowa caucuses. The results rolled in. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he's still in because he's an arrogant SOB. And he is hoping that he wins because he's hoping for a Hail Mary from the DOJ where they knock Donald Trump off of the ballot unjustly. And he's going to try to come by his win dishonestly because that's the kind of scum that he is. And Nikki Haley, same thing. She knows that she has no path to victory. She probably has a better path to victory than Ron DeSantis because they're going to New Hampshire. Then I think they're going to South Carolina. Obviously, South Carolina, Nikki Haley's home state. And then you've got New Hampshire, where Nikki Haley is polling better than Ron DeSantis. She's probably going to get Chris Christie's vote because he's a never Trumper and Nikki Haley is a never Trumper. Mark my words, I bet Ron DeSantis will drop out before the primary or before Florida because he does not want to be embarrassed by how badly he loses his home state. But anyway, so I don't know about you, but Joe Biden's his post is a bit of a stretch if you ask me. The terminology he uses is infuriating by itself. Okay. He said, "It's you and me against everyone else," which is such a Marxist tactic. It's not even funny. Like that's straight up out of Karl Marx's textbook. How do I take over and how do I run a successful regime? It's you and me against everyone else. Okay, that is a Marxist tactic. That's what he said. And there's a big difference between Trump and Biden. And this is a big difference. It's when Biden condemns the other side. He's talking about the American people. Okay. He's constantly talking about the MAGA Republicans. That's half of the country. Okay. A lot of people voted for Donald Trump in those Iowa caucuses. He won 98 counties. Okay. Nikki Haley won the other county. There were 99 counties, and she won it by one vote. He got a lot of votes, folks. So when he talks about MAGA Republicans, he's talking about half of the country. And when he condemns the other side, he's talking about the American people. You, me, we. But when Trump condemns the other side, he talks about the bureaucracy of DC, otherwise known as the establishment. These are not average people. These are establishment shills. And probably the most irritating thing about the ex post that Biden put out there is that he's attacking voters. He's attacking MAGA Republicans. And the very least, the very people he's supposed to be representing. Okay, it doesn't matter. You're the president of the United States. You should be representing all. If I wear a MAGA hat and I got all kinds of guns, I own an AR-15 and I chew tobacco and I spit it out onto the ground. You should be, and I drive a 4x4 Ford F-150. You should be representing me, along with all of your base, because you are the president of the United States. And that tells you a lot right now. Biden is currently the leader of the free world. His job is to protect our freedoms. How is he going to protect our freedoms and protect the freedoms of half the country when he claims that half of Americans pose some sort of existential threat because they're MAGA extremists? How is he going to protect MAGA extremists if he claims that we're some sort of threat? Spending thousands of dollars more a month on groceries, on basic necessities. That's extreme. Okay. I told you, I gave you the statistics. You're spending $1,000 more a month on basic necessities like groceries. And that's if you're not a family with children. If you have children, you're spending way more. Millions pouring over our southern border. That's extreme. Trying to trash away the Second Amendment. That's extreme. Labeling half the people in this country as extreme is, well, I don't know, extreme. You're the extremist, Joe Biden. But winning the Iowa caucus is not exactly what I would call or what you would call extreme. Donald Trump won the Iowa caucus. That's not extreme. He won it by a large margin. That said, when you've got national leaders, when national leaders tend to label people the enemy, if you don't vote for them, that's a sign you're dealing with people who don't respect democracy, our democratic process of selecting leadership. Okay, this guy is a dictator, and make no mistake about that. He's the extremist. It's not extreme to not want to spend a lot of money on groceries. It's not extreme to want to keep your gun and go to the range. It's not extreme to want to make sure that we don't have illegal immigrants pouring over the border and operating sex trafficking rings. Okay, it's not extreme. Okay, I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to the Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. When we come back, I've got to talk about this Illinois law. I'm really excited about HB 4417. It deals with union propaganda. That's next.
Yeah, you should have seen them childers kids when the weather would start turning cold. Number 2 would always grab the hoodie. Number 5 busted out the long socks, but old number 3 would be totally bundled up. And hey, speaking of bundling it.
morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in each and every morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. We are going to be talking about how Joe Biden is he going to be knocked off the ballot in Illinois? We'll have to see. Lawsuits have been filed against President Joe Biden's candidacy for the Illinois primary ballot. So we'll talk about those lawsuits here coming up in just a little bit. But first, I did want to chat about the Illinois lawmakers and what they've got cooking. So they're considering legislation that would take time away from teaching the basics, like math, like reading, to allow their union friends a platform for union recruitment and indoctrination. The Illinois policy, they've got the story out. House Bill 4417. They're going to require high schools to observe an entire week annually as Workplace Readiness Week. And you're like, oh, Kat, that sounds so nice. Workplace Readiness Week? This sounds like they're going to help Illinois students prepare for the workforce. Wrong. They're actually going to try to indoctrinate your kids and create little union nights out of them. Good little union members who pay their dues. So they are... they're not going to learn how to apply for a job. They're not going to learn or how to prepare for an interview. No. Far from that. Instead, they're going to mandate that high schools provide students every year for a week information on issues like the right to organize a union in the workplace. Yes. So this is union propaganda. If it's passed, this is going to provide a platform for union propaganda without allowing the same privilege for any other viewpoints, okay? It does nothing to give the students the skills they need to make them ready for the workplace. Nothing. Doesn't prepare them how to interview, doesn't prepare them how to fill out a job application, nothing like that. No. This is a gift to the Illinois unions. And this shouldn't come as a surprise because the Illinois unions, they're owed at least this, right? Because 9 out of 10 current lawmakers, they received money from unions. 9 out of 10. Between January of 2010 to June of 2023 in Illinois, unions poured $60.2 million into lawmakers' political committees. That's according to records obtained by the Illinois State Board of Ed, or obtained from the Illinois State Board of Elections. So we're looking at, a 13-year span. Unions have poured $60.2 million into lawmakers' political committees. The vast majority of those funds, the $60.2 million, where is it? Where's it going? Oh, yeah, 95% of it went to Democrat lawmakers. Oh! More specifically, 4 out of 5 current lawmakers have received money from teachers' unions. Okay, so from teachers' unions, these lawmakers are getting all this money to the tune of nearly $20 million. Okay, so that's what this is all about. HB 4417. This is the most recent in a long line of thank you gifts the government unions will receive here from the Illinois General Assembly. This is a thank you. Hey, thank you for all of your contributions. We're going to give you a platform to recruit and to indoctrinate children. And the kids can't read. We just talked about it. Pontiac High School, they've got a 16% math rate. The kids can do 16% of kids in Pontiac High School, that's grades 9 through 12, they can do math. 16% of them can do math at grade level. That's it. And it's like 23% for reading. That's bad. All right. I do want to shift gears. We will talk about this, Biden's bid for the primary ballot here in the state of Illinois. A couple of lawsuits. Talked with Terry Newsom. You guys can go read the story on Center Square. I wrote it, talked with Terry, and some of the other Illinois voters. They are alleging that under the 14th Amendment, Biden has given aid or comfort to enemies through his open border policies. More specifically, there are some exhibits in this, Exhibit A, B, C, D, and they detail out how Biden has given this aid and comfort to the enemies of the U.S. So, for example, Terry brings up the $75 billion of military equipment and weaponry that was left in Afghanistan. Now it's being used by the Taliban against men and women, soldiers in Iraq. Terry even went as far as to tell me a personal story. He says, My niece's husband is back in Iraq. What are they doing in Iraq? They're using some of the weapons Biden left behind. So our weapons are being used against our own men and women because of Joe Biden. The lawsuit alleges that Joe Biden took an oath to support the Constitution, both as a U.S. Senator and as a VP. Now, he has given aid in the 14th Amendment. Read the text. It talks about people who have taken an oath to support the Constitution. They cannot hold office if they took an oath and then turned around and gave aid and comfort to enemies and engaged in insurrection and rebellion. Like I said, the 14th Amendment comes from the Civil War era. And the 14th Amendment is very clear where it says you took an oath to support the Constitution. The president doesn't take an oath to support the Constitution. In 2017, you can actually listen to Donald Trump's pledge. He does not pledge support to the Constitution. He supports or he pledges to protect the Constitution. It's different wording. However, U.S. senators specifically vowed to support the Constitution. And Joe Biden has taken that oath 9 times. So lawsuits against Joe Biden, it mirrors the one against Donald Trump, where the 14th Amendment is cited as cause for ballot removal. Objectors to Trump allege that he instigated a breach of the U.S. Capitol on Jan 6, 2021. So, that's, and it says insurrection. I don't like the 14th Amendment, these lawsuits, either of them, because here's the thing. It's a weird precedent where we're like, okay, Donald Trump, he committed insurrection and therefore he should be removed from the ballot via the 14th Amendment. Wait a second. We have to charge him with insurrection and we have to convict him of insurrection in the court of law before we can argue the 14th Amendment and grounds for removal. We have to prove that he was, in fact, caused this insurrection. And same with Joe Biden. We have to prove that he's treasonous before we remove him from the ballot. Like I said, I'm not a fan. There's another objection that I like more. We'll get into that here on the other side. Then a little bit later, the Supreme Court of the United States. You won't believe the case that they're looking at. They took up a case after an appeals court rules that homeless people have the right to camp out on your sidewalk. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about all of that here on the Morning Buzz. You're listening to Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble.
The news is being brought to you by Tax and Accounting Plus. Focus on growing your business and servicing your...
morning. This is the morning buzz. I so do appreciate you texting in. And Billy, I really appreciate the text. I do. I've been talking about HB 4417. My big gripe with this here, folks, and I'm not trying to rip on unions because there are a lot of good ones out there, and I'll get to that here in a second. But my issue with this is that they are using um, this public infrastructure, okay, so my taxpayer money, to indoctrinate these kids and as a platform for union recruitment. Okay, this is public infrastructure, and it's not right. And we're not allowing the same privilege for any other viewpoint. Okay, this is my problem. This is going to be a platform for specifically public unions, okay, government unions. I think this is what Joe Biden has been pushing for. He wants more public sector jobs, not private sector jobs. So we're growing up. I grew up in union country. Okay, I mean, Illinois, we're all about the unions, specifically the teachers union. And we've got we're in the Rust Belt here, and it was a lot of manufacturing here in the state of Illinois. Now, being that I have seen a lot of different things, I want to talk about, are unions a good idea? Well, they sure were a necessity. They were necessary when unionization first started. Workers nationwide worked unreal amounts of hours per day, a week. Okay, so they were working ridiculous hours for very little pay in harsh conditions, dangerous conditions, and there were pretty much no worker protections, okay, or rights back then. And they did an amazing job, the unionization, when it first started. We have unions to thank for the 40-hour work week. Otherwise, we'd be working way, way, way over 40-hour work weeks. Guaranteed breaks. We have benefits, and most everybody gets in the U.S. now, regardless of whether or not you are in a union. Okay, so you get benefits even if you're not in a union. So, like, for example, I'm not in a union. I'm not in a union, and we haven't unionized here at Great Plains Media, but I still get benefits, right? Or I can choose to utilize those benefits or not. But since those times, I can only tell you what I've seen. Okay, and it comes down to this: it depends on the individual unions. There are unions that have very, very smart people, and they're very smart, and they realize that they're a team with the company. Okay, they realize that the company doesn't make any money or even loses money, um, or doesn't make it. That if the company doesn't make any money or loses money, then pretty soon none of them will have a job. Okay, so you're a team with that company, and you want to see that the company succeeds. Okay, so otherwise you're not going to have a job yourself. Nobody's going to have a job. The company workers or the union workers. From top bottom, nobody will have a job. They'll try to work out real small raises, reasonable benefits. Okay, the company tries to do that. Then there are the screw the company unions, and those are strictly versus them. And then they try to squeeze everything out of the company, and even if it means if the company gets destroyed. And that's dangerous. And this is what the Democrats, and specifically public unions, their platform is. They are the screw you company unions. And I want to get to Billy's text here on the other side because it's good. I really do see the benefit of certain unions, but like I said, it's got to be a union where you realize that you are a team with the company. And we're starting to lose that. I'll be back on the other side next.
Is right at your fingertips. Annie's Eats has been serving their mouth-watering barbecue to blow.
Seen at EV charging stations around the state yesterday since the temperatures tumbled over the weekend. Several cars had to be towed from a charging line in Evergreen Park on Monday as temperatures struggled to rise above freezing. Tests found that electric vehicles lose between 20 to 30% of their range when the temperatures dip below freezing. News on the air, on the web, on your app, and on Alexa. I'm Tom Davis.
Bloomington normal forecast on Cities 92.9.
A wind chill advisory until 9 this morning. Mostly sunny and breezy today with a high of 23. A slight chance of snow overnight and 17. Better chance of snow tomorrow with a high near 25. Colder Friday with a high of 10. You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest Central Illinois weather forecast, guaranteed. Rain, shine, or snow, it's your dependable weather on Cities 92.9.
From the Johns in Lexington studio, don't be fooled by corporate preferred list. Tell your insurance company you chose Johns in Lexington, preferred by their customers, not insurance companies. Cities 92.9. The Morning Buzz with Kat Peterson. This is your hometown conservative talk show that examines today's stories through a brand new lens. This is the Morning Buzz, brought to you by McLean County Asphalt. They've been repairing driveways for more than 50 years. The Morning Buzz with Kat Peterson on Cities 92.9.
Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate it. You guys can always text me at 309-451-9299. I'm going to get to a few of your texts today. So here's a text. So I work in a heating and cooling field, and we get $70 per hour. Do you know how much a non-union person gets paid? About $20 or $25 per hour, which I have a brother who works in residential construction, and he's a non-union member. And that's about what he gets paid. So you're right. That is the case. We all get insurance paid for all of our retirement. The non-union people still have to buy Obamacare and still have to support themselves through retirement. So you better think about it. Would you rather have your child knowing that he can work for a non-union contractor and make $20 an hour, or would you rather have your child do the exact same job making $150,000 a year? Yes. Now, here's my big thing with HB 4417. That's what we're talking about. This is a bill that Illinois lawmakers have been considering. It's legislation, and they want to take time away from teaching the basics. Okay, this is public infrastructure, by the way. We're talking about public schools, K through 12, or high schools. We're talking about 9 through 12. And they want to use public infrastructure to really, what I think is use their propaganda, union propaganda, and teach kids about union propaganda. I don't think that it is about the union you're talking about, Texter. I think it's about getting people to get into public unions. There's a big difference between public and private unions. And what it is, it's a workplace readiness week, and it's an annual week, or it's an annual event where it's a week. And you would think that it's about, preparing kids how to apply for a job and prepare them for an interview. No, it's really about union information and how you have a right to organize, and exactly what you're talking about. They'll probably bring that up. Hey, you're going to make $20 an hour here, but you could make $70 an hour here if you're a part of a union. That's fine. However, you need to provide some sort of other side. Okay. You have to allow the same privilege for the other side. If there's benefits to working for a company and not working for a union, I'd imagine that there's a reason why, companies do what they do, and those companies exist, and they could probably talk until they're blue in the face about why you should work for them instead of a union company or a union. Now, I was talking about, hey, there's different kinds of unions, and I think it's all based off of the individual union. You've got unions out there that are screw you unions, or screw the company unions, who are strictly us versus them, and then they try to squeeze the company out of everything they've got, and the company gets destroyed. Okay. And it makes it impossible for business owners. Okay. So small business owners, maybe like a small business owner who's in residential construction, he's trying to break away from these, bigger companies, and he's trying to start up something small. He might provide, some different kinds of benefits. Maybe he can't get you out there at $70 an hour, but you have the freedom, you have smaller hours, or there's all kinds of things that these business owners try to do to get you to work for them. Uh, but ultimately, these screw you company unions, they will destroy business. Now, to be fair, sometimes they go up against a company, and that's just as bad. So I don't want to aim my finger at just one side on that. The companies, they'll have a screw you union, and it'll be kind of like a screw you union, screw you company, and they're not in this team oriented union company partnership. And I've seen a lot of unions. I've seen union members that hate the company so much that they would be willing to see that company destroyed. It's like they don't even realize that they would be out of a job, okay, if that company were to go under. Anything to hurt the company. That's what these unions, the unions that I see, for example, the Chicago Teachers Union, public unions, a lot of the time, private unions are a little different story, but even some private unions, they have this screw you company mentality. Here in Illinois, there's a lot of manufacturing. I've seen it with my own eyes where you've got, this screw you company union tactic, and these manufacturing employees, you guys are going to be out of a job if you have this sort. And they're being unreasonable with their demands. Okay. And then you're going to kill business. You're going to kill companies, and that's not cool. But again, like I said, unionization when it first started, totally necessary. Workers nationwide, they had unreal amounts hours a week. You can have the unions to thank for a 40-hour work week, but now we've got a lot of protections in place. And you don't necessarily need to be a part of a union to be protected, because there's already laws on top of the union, the right to work states and things like that. There's already things on top of that that ensure that you have rights in the workplace. Okay, so it's a lie by the left and by Democrats. And really, I just don't think that we should be teaching this kind of stuff in school. And if we are going to teach it, then we need to offer other viewpoints. Get a small business owner in there who doesn't have a team of union members and has just employees working for them. Because you can do it both ways. It works both ways. I'm not a part of a union, and I'm happy with my job. Okay. So it can work both ways. You don't need to be a part of a union in order to have a nice job. Uh, However, I love that comment. I thought it was a great comment. We're going to be talking a little bit here about Chicago bragging about how they secured millions in EV infrastructure, and now the cars aren't charging in the winter. I think that's kind of funny because JB Pritzker, he's touting that he spent $14.9 million on these EV charging stations. But these charging stations don't work in frigid temperatures. So we had a bunch of people in Oak Brook, Illinois. They were at 0%, no juice, a bunch of dead Teslas. It was a EV graveyard. It was an electric vehicle graveyard. So we're going to chat about that. But first, I did want to get to the Supreme Court. They've taken up a case now where they are deciding whether or not the rest of the country should succumb to the conditions of San Francisco, essentially. So the Supreme Court of the United States, they're taking up a case after an appeals court rules homeless people have the right to camp out on your sidewalk. Yeah, so SCOTUS, they decided to take up this case, and they're going to decide whether or not the rest of the country needs to succumb to the same conditions of San Francisco. California is home to the largest population of degenerates living in tents on public property. These are often referred to as homeless encampments. But the dumb thing about that is that the reason the people live like that is not because they lack a house. These unhoused individuals, they're homeless individuals, live like that by choice a lot of times. Okay, specifically in California, you should see their homeless encampments. A lot of times they've got a flat screen TV in their tent. Um, there are more than enough resources to place them in government housing, but they don't want that because they can't do drugs there. Okay. So rather than be sober and housed, they've chosen to live in tent cities and they want to do open deal drug deals. So many places have anti-camping or camping ordinances. You cannot camp. Um, I think we've changed up our laws here in the city of Bloomington. They dealt with this, so it's beyond asinine that the state officials are pretending as if their hands are tied and they can't just go and clear these things out because they totally can. There's anti-camping ordinances, there's anti-camping laws on the books in California specifically, and even here. I mean, they might have even adjusted them to deal with the homeless population in Bloomington. I'd have to look into that, but it's ridiculous and it's asinine to try to say that you can't do anything about the homeless population when there's ordinances on the books that say that there is anti-camping and you can't be here. Get the cops to go in there and clear these things out and enforce the law, enforce the ordinances. So, according to Business Insider, in what is an unusual situation, uh, a consortment or a group of liberal politicians had asked conservative leaning Supreme Court to overturn a lower court ruling that has kept them from sweeping public homeless encampments. So there was a lower court, I think it was like an appeals court, that told these liberal politicians, no, you cannot allow these, you cannot allow these homeless encampments. You have to sweep them because you have ordinances or something like that. So they're asking the conservative leaning Supreme Court to overturn that lower court ruling that has kept them from sweeping the public homeless encampments. Kept them from sweeping the public homeless encampments. So there is a group of politicians who want to sweep the encampments. So on Friday, the Supreme Court is going to weigh on the issue, a decision that was backed by California Governor Gavin Newsom and other Democrat leaders in California who are seeking more latitude to address homeless populations that have become more prevalent in the region in recent years, especially since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is one of the most significant cases involving the rights of homeless individuals to be taken up by the Supreme Court in the recent decades, and it could have huge ramifications on the processes by which Western states approach the ever-present homelessness crisis. So we've got a homeless population here. It'll probably set some precedent here. The Supreme Court agreed to re-examine the case, Johnson versus the city of Grants Pass. So the Supreme Court, they're re-examining this case where the lower court said that, hey, you can't sweep out these homeless encampments. These homeless encampment people have rights. The U.S. Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit deemed it unconstitutional for cities to punish homeless residents for staying on public property if they lacked access to shelter alternatives. Okay, so this is a liberal appeals court where they were like, okay, you can't touch the homeless residents if they're on sidewalks and if they're in these homeless encampments, okay, because if they lack access to shelter alternatives, then you have to leave them there. I understand the argument that lacking a shelter should not be a crime. But again, this is not the issue here. These encampments are extremely gross. They're doing fentanyl, open air drug deals. No sober or sane person would ever live like that. But these people choose to live like that because they get their dope that way, and they can do dope if they're not in government housing. The issue is that a vast majority are high on dope while the rest are extremely mentally ill. Okay, that's the issue here. And the extent of mental illness that these individuals deal with is not the same as the average liberal living with anxiety disorder. Okay, this is actual mental illness, and they cannot live on their own. And they are living in these public spaces These people pose a serious safety threat to society. A lot of the time, they're either high on dope or they have an extreme mental illness. So liberals pretend they're being compassionate by not putting dangerously ill people into institutions to get them the help they need and to protect society. And they act like it's better to just have them run amok like the purge. Okay. That's what these liberals try to do. They're trying to say, oh, it's compassionate to leave them there. It's not compassionate. They need help. They need to be institutionalized and they need to get the help they need. Okay. Claiming that these cases revolves around the rights of homeless individuals is absurd. Homeless people are not magically some new class that gets special rights. At least it shouldn't be that way. Okay, they're not a special class of people. They are already afforded extreme special treatment from things like food stamps. You get free housing if they want it, which is clear that they don't. Okay, they could get into government housing if they wanted it, but they don't want it because they can't do drugs in government housing. This is clear, or they're not competent enough mentally to get into government housing and to do what it takes to get into government housing. Okay, so the Constitution already says all men are created equal. So why on earth are we suddenly allowing these people to be rewarded for doing nothing but helping destroy progressive cities? Okay, people are created equal. We shouldn't be rewarding them for doing nothing but destroying progressive cities with their open air drug deals. I don't understand why California keeps making up excuses as if they can't do anything. Okay. Um, when the Chinese dictator came into town, they cleaned up San Francisco overnight. They swept all of these people out of the streets. This is just pathetic. They can do something about the homeless encampments. There's ordinances, there's laws that you can have in place. Progressives created this mess and they don't have an excuse to justify why they haven't done anything yet. They should do something about this. And they can't have their circus without a tent, okay? They can't have their circus without a tent. And that's probably what sums this all up. You can't have your circus without a tent. You have to have the tent if you want the circus. So I'm going to be back here on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Go ahead, text me at 309-451-9299.
Yeah, you should have seen them childers kids when the weather would start turning cold. Number 2 would always grab the hoodie. Number 5 busted out the long socks, but old number 3.
in the haystack.
4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day.
Hey, this is the
ZipRecruiter,
Morning Buzz.
the
Thanks so much
smartest
for
way
tuning
to
in. I
hire.
do
And right
appreciate it. Go
now,
ahead
you
and
can
smash
try
that like button.
ZipRecruiter for free.
Back.
That's right,
The
free.
show is
Just go to this
halfway,
exclusive
we're
web
halfway done
address,
here with the 8 o'clock hour. We are going to
ZipRecruiter.com/free.
be still
That's
chatting about the
ZipRecruiter.com/free.
and how they don't work.
ZipRecruiter.com/free.
This infrastructure.
Cities 92.9 Sports.
Illinois State hits the hardwood tonight in a rematch with one of the top teams in the conference, Drake at Sefke Arena at 7. The Bulldogs are 5-1 in the conference and trail leading Indiana State by half a game. The Birds are slumping. They've lost 5 straight, including a 17-point loss to Drake and Iowa last month. 14th ranked Illinois heads to Ann Arbor tomorrow night to face Michigan. Bulls go north of the border tomorrow night to face Toronto and Canada. Hockey, the Blues are in the nation's capital to face the Caps, while the Hawks beat San Jose in a shootout 2-1. They are in Buffalo tonight to face the Sabres. The manufacturer of Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes' helmet said the headgear served its intended purpose despite cracking and a piece breaking off in sub-zero temperatures during Saturday night's playoff game. I'm Chris Murphy, Cities 92.9 Sports.
And this is El Donzo. I'm Deez. And don't forget to tune in to the El Donzo and Deez Show, the redheaded stepchild of Cities 92.9, every Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m., brought to you by EnviroSeal.
That's right. We're going 2 full hours now of the latest in local, national, and worldly news with our own little humorous spin on it. You get twice the bad news and twice the bad jokes right here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal.
Catch the Chandler and Swan Show on Cities 92.9 every Sunday at 7 a.m. with an encore at 5 p.m. It's two guys having a conversation about, well, whatever's on our minds. Plus, we put the spotlight on local business owners, brought to you by Limelight Graphics and Carlock.
You're up, cat.
What's new, cat?
Not
drop out.
Cat
It is something. Like I'm going to shy away from that right about. It is scummy. I mean, I know. People are upset with me. That's okay. This is an opinion show, the Morning Buzz. We don't have to have the same opinions, but we can talk about it here. I got a text this morning and they said that they're just infuriated with my program because I bash other Republicans to the point of disgust. And Ron DeSantis is a good man with an impressive military background. Yes. Thank you for your service, Ron. I appreciate your service. But just because you have an R in front of your name or behind your name, whatever, doesn't mean that I'm not going to call you scummy when you're doing scummy things. Okay. Vivek Ramaswamy. So have you ever played a game of chess? Okay, when you're playing a game of chess, there's something that you do when you know that there is no maneuver to beat your opponent in this game of chess. You lay down your king and you lose with grace. Okay, that's what it is. You lose with grace in chess. It's called something, but you're supposed to do that. You're not supposed to go to the very end. You're supposed to lose with grace and with dignity. I'm not a golf player or golf person, but that is also a game of class, and you are supposed to, play with class and with dignity. And Ron DeSantis is not playing with class. Vivek Ramaswamy is playing with class. Okay, so he is not the leader of the Republican Party. It's very clear that Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. If you don't believe me, look at the numbers, okay? He won Iowa, the Iowa caucuses, with half of the money. He spent, what was it, $340 per vote in comparison to Ron DeSantis, who spent $1,700 per vote, okay? And he won every single county except one. And Ron DeSantis didn't even win that county. He lost that county to Nikki Haley. Okay, Ron DeSantis spent over double in Iowa, and he didn't even come close to beating Donald Trump. Not even close. Okay, Vivek Ramaswamy sees the writing on the wall. He knows he has no path to victory. Ron DeSantis has less of a path of victory than even Nikki Haley at this point. But he's remaining in the race, okay? And you have to ask yourself, wait a second, why are you staying in the race. Why are you doing this? It's because he has an ego. It's the same reason the guy can't laugh at himself. I'm not doing anything. All I'm saying is I'm calling his behavior out. That's all I'm doing. Okay, Ron DeSantis, he's doing this all to himself. He can't laugh at himself. You know, what was it? It was the Paul David a podcast, Patrick Bet David podcast where he, you know, gave him a pair of shoes as a joke because of the Rhonda DeSantis high heels, where he's wearing heels. And it was a joke because there was a meme circulating that Ron DeSantis wears high heels. And it was funny, and he couldn't even laugh at himself. Donald Trump laughs at himself all the time. Okay. And people are like, Kat, you're such a Trumpist. No, I'm really not. I am just against the establishment. And Ron DeSantis is pro-establishment. And here's why. He's willing to win this race. There's no path to victory for him. None. Zero. There's more of a path of victory for Nikki Haley because she's going to win. She's not going to win New Hampshire, but she's going to win over Ron DeSantis. She'll come in second in New Hampshire, probably second in South Carolina as well. I'm just talking politics here, guys. That's what I do, okay? The writing is on the wall. Nikki Haley has more of a path to victory than Ron DeSantis ever would. Why is Ron staying in the race? Is it because he's arrogant? Is it because he can't lose with grace? And maybe a little bit of that, and maybe the fact that he's waiting for the DOJ to wrongfully prosecute and convict Donald Trump of insurrection. Okay, or some sort of miracle where Donald Trump gets tossed off the ballot, and that is not America. It's not democracy. It's not a constitutional republic. It's not the way we do things here in America. We don't weaponize government against our political opposition. And then we certainly, as Republicans, should not benefit or stand or want to benefit from that behavior. And if you want to benefit from behavior, here's the thing. If you're not against corruption and you're benefiting from corruption, then you're corrupt. Ron DeSantis is corrupt. He's hoping to win on this idea where we throw off somebody off of a ballot. Okay, and that's undemocratic. And I'm not cool with that. And it's scummy. And I'm not going to shy away from it. And I'm sorry, but just because you have an R in front of your name does not mean I worship the ground you walk on. I worship one man or one God and one God alone. And I worship one man, Jesus. That's it. Okay. Just because you have an R in front of your name does not protect you from criticism. Okay. There's things that Donald Trump has done that I don't like. Okay. Banning bump stocks, the COVID response, and not draining the swamp like he said he was going to. And he's not a conservative. Okay. He probably won't go out there and issue a federal ban on abortion. I'd love to see that. Me being a conservative, I think that abortion is a stain on society. And I think it's disturbing that we allow people to kill children. And we actually pay for people to kill children using taxpayer funded resources and money. I think it's disturbing. And it's a human rights atrocity. It's atrocious. And Donald Trump is not strong against abortion. He's not a conservative. He's a populist. And a bit progressive, honestly. So, yeah, there are things that I don't like about Donald Trump. However, Donald Trump, when he speaks or condemns the other side, he's not condemning the American people. He's condemning the establishment. And he's condemning these people who are making it impossible for us to vote for who we want to vote for. And Ron DeSantis is pro-establishment because he's using the establishment or wants to use or is dreaming that the establishment will give him what he wants and make him the only person on the Republican primary ballot. So there you have it. That's my take on Ron DeSantis. Like I said, thank you for your service, Ron. Appreciate what you've done in Florida. Although, like any other governor in any other state, he's got his issues in Florida. You talk to the people in Florida, they're not happy about the insurance companies. The insurance companies are robbing them blind. They're not giving them the money that they're paying into these companies because he's in bed with the insurance companies. As a governor, he gives them all kinds of breaks. Okay, so these people are suffering because they've got hurricanes that come in and take out their houses, and they're not getting compensation, or they're not getting their claims through these insurance companies because of legislation that he's signed. Okay, so there's things that he's done in Florida that aren't good, like everybody, and that's okay. You can be an imperfect individual and an imperfect governor. He's done a lot of good in that state. He's been tough on the cultural issues. He's been tough on the indoctrination of children in schools, and I appreciate that. However, if you are benefiting from corruption, and if you're not standing against corruption, and you're benefiting from it, or you want to benefit from corruption, you are corrupt. All right, I do have to take a break. You're listening to The Morning Buzz.
The news is being brought to you by Tax and Accounting Plus. Focus on growing your business and servicing your customers while Tax and Accounting Plus handles your payroll and bookkeeping.
Dahlia Bolin, 17, pleaded guilty in Tazewell County Court Tuesday to charges of first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder, solicitation of murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit murder relating to the deadly October 22nd of 2021 shooting of Rebecca Bolin and her father, Douglas Bolin, who was wounded. Bolin must now testify against a co-defendant. Biden's bid for the Illinois primary ballot is challenged. Kat Peterson has more.
The lawsuit alleges that under the 14th Amendment, Joe Biden has given aid or comfort to the enemies through his open border policies.
You know, he left $75 billion military equipment and weaponry in Afghanistan for the Taliban, who is our enemy. They're using some of the weapons that Biden left behind.
The lawsuit alleges Biden took an oath to support the Constitution 9 times as both a U.S. Senator and a Vice President, and has given aid or comfort to the enemies of the U.S.
My personal views are, I hope the Supreme Court throws it out because it should happen. It's not a good thing for America. And if it doesn't get thrown out, it's a win-win for us. We have the same rights as the left does to hold Biden accountable for what he's doing.
The Illinois State Board of Elections will hold a special meeting concerning these objections on Wednesday, January 17th at 9:30 a.m. The primary in Illinois is March 19th. I'm Katrina Peterson.
News on the air, on the web, on your app, and on Alexa. I'm Tom Davis.
How's that? Is that better? Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Is that better? Maybe not. Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. Let me know in the comment section. That's better. Okay, great. That's odd. Yeah, one little button will do it. If you guys can hear me, that's great. But like I said, Trump's not a part of the establishment. How do I know that? Because he's literally being prosecuted in New York, Florida, in Georgia, and the DOJ has been after him. All of these prosecutors are after him. So the government is after him. The government is being weaponized. These prosecutors, they're DAs, they're backed by taxpayer dollars, and they are going after him over these frivolous things. Okay, so he's not a part of the establishment, and he's also not in office. So, like, there's that. You can't be a part of the establishment and not be in office of some kind or some sort of bureaucrat. Okay. Yeah. So Biden, his house has never been raided. And Trump's house has been raided. So there you have it. So to sit there and say that Trump is a part of the establishment, you're wrong. Trump's not a corrupt person. Oh, Dan. We're going to be back in just a little bit. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. grab your coffee. Grab your coffee. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. And let's talk about the news today. I so do appreciate you guys always tuning in each and every morning. And I know I'm fired up this morning, and I'm not upset with listeners who, have a different opinion than I do. If you love Ron DeSantis and you're upset that I'm talking ill of another Republican, that's okay. That's totally fine. But to me, the R does not exclude you from criticism. That's the R. It does not exclude you from. In fact, it should mean that you should be held to a higher standard. Ron DeSantis should be held to a high standard, and he's not. He's not doing the game of chess. Okay, like I said, it's a game of chess where you know your beat, and you refuse to drop out. You refuse to take your king and lay it down. And I don't like that. When I play chess with people, I say, hey, I'm really bad at chess, by the way. I'll lay down my king. When I know I'm outmaneuvered, I lay down my king and I say, great game. Okay. Sportsmanship. Okay. This is just basic tenets of a good human being. And I'm not seeing that from Ron DeSantis. So it's kind of scummy. Okay. And I'm not gonna shy away from saying that. And oh well. I do want to talk about the electric vehicle charging stations, because Governor J.B. Pritzker, he just was touting these $14.9 million that is going to go towards the support, or it's going to support the expansion of EV charging stations and EV charging infrastructure. I love it. Somebody texted in at the text line. They sent me a big old picture of their truck and they said, hey, loud pipes save lives, which is so true. You're going to have to call your friend if you drive an EV. You're going to have to call your friend to come pick you up, which happened to a lot of people in Chicago over this cold spell. So we know that we went through this winter storm. It's going to get a little bit warmer today. 24 degrees, I think, is the high. Don't call it a heat wave. But no matter how much the government taxes us, they will never be able to control sub-freezing temperatures in Chicago. Why? Because there's a little thing called winter. And yeah, that happens in Chicago. It's the Windy City. And these charging stations in Chicago have turned these charging stations in Chicago, they're essentially electric vehicle cemeteries because all the cars are dead. There were a lot of Tesla owners. They were seeking to charge their vehicles amid these frigid temperatures that gripped the Midwest. And the charging stations have essentially turned into car graveyards, and there's no juice. Still 0% is what one Tesla owner said to a reporter of Fox Chicago out of Oak Brook, Illinois. There was a supercharging station, and it wasn't working. The charging stations weren't working, and they said, we got a bunch of dead robots out here. That's what one man said. Wow. It might seem that we're not even close to get ready and to being ready for Biden's EV mandate. Okay. The facts, they tend to get in the way of climate alarmism, and progressives. They've decided that they want to run the entire economy on solar and wind, and it's quite obvious they don't know how to plan to do that. They have no plan on how to run things when the sun goes down and when there's no wind. They have no plan, and Democrats believe they can control the weather. And they're like, oh, well, we can control the weather if we just tax people an itty bit more. We'll just tax them an itty bit more. So it doesn't make sense. And here we have Pritzker. I think this story is really funny out of Chicago, where you've got just tons of people lined up to try to charge their EVs. They're having no luck. They're calling up people to come pick them up amid these freezing temperatures. Hey, I need you to come in your Ford F-150. And I need you to come pick me up. Loud pipes save lives, by the way, folks. Diesel, right? Diesel trucks. The ironic part about this is that Governor J.B. Pritzker just announced that he secured this grant of $14.9 million to support this expansion of EV charging stations. And here's my thought. Building these charging stations, what is that going to help? Because if these charging stations don't do anything to charge the cars, and you spend all this money on these charging stations, and you can't charge the car in the wintertime, which 9 months out of the year, Illinois is pretty cold. Okay. It's pretty cold. It can get pretty cold 9 months out of the year. And yeah, what is clear, it's unclear. I don't know what he plans to do, Governor J.B. Pritzker, with this $14.9 million, because I'll tell you right now, putting it towards EV charging stations and EV charging infrastructure is a waste of money because they don't work, clearly. And look, it's not EVs aren't some magic pill that the government has been hoping will control the wind in the Windy City. Okay. EVs are not going to control the amount of rain that the desert gets. EVs don't control the weather. Okay. If you drive an EV, you're not doing anything for the climate. The climate changes. It's actually biblical prophecy tells us that the earth will pass. And I take great comfort in that. I'm okay with that because there's a life beyond this one on Earth, and I'm all right with the Earth passing away because I know it's going to happen. It's the truth. It's prophecy, biblical prophecy. So EVs, they just they don't control much of anything except more misery. They bring on more misery for the average American. And like I said, I don't know what we need to stop pretending that the sun's going to explode tomorrow if we don't radically transform society back into the dark ages. I think we need to take a step back. But here's the thing about this story. The sad thing is that this is going to be dismissed as some sort of right-wing conspiracy. And then the Democrats, they're going to demand more funding. That won't do anything. And they're going to demand we need to spend more on EV charging stations. Well, the charging stations don't work 9 months out of the year. So, yeah. Anyway, for the millionth time, it doesn't matter how much the government taxes us. They're never going to be able to control the direction of the wind. All right, I'm back next. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. And wow, the 8 o'clock hour just flies by. You guys can tune in every morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Cat Peterson 929. And we talked about the EVs today, the EV charging stations not keeping up with the frigid temperatures. You can't charge your EV. And we're going to build more of them. Yeah, $14 million worth of EV stations that don't work. So I also wanted to talk about Trump winning the Iowa caucuses, landslide victory, and subsequently Sleepy Joe. He lashed out at all you MAGA extremists, all you MAGA Republicans, okay? And then he asked for donations to his campaign on Twitter. The funny thing is, I know that Joe did not post this. He probably doesn't even know what X is or Twitter. He probably doesn't know that Twitter is now called X. But here's what he said. Looks like Donald Trump just won Iowa. He's the clear front runner on the other side at this point. But here's the thing. This election was always going to be you and me versus extreme MAGA Republicans. It was true yesterday and it'll be true tomorrow. So the most crazy thing about this is that this post attacks voters. It's attacking voters and the very people he's supposed to be representing. Okay, there's a big difference between Trump and Biden. And the big difference is when Biden condemns people, or on the other side, condemns the other side, he means the American people. He means you and me, people who voted for Donald Trump either in 2016 or 2020. He's talking about the American people. When Trump condemns the other side, he's talking about the bureaucracy in DC, otherwise known as the establishment. These are the people who are supposed to be representing we, the people, but they're the. Okay, this is straight out of Marxism, how to be a Marxist, how to be a communist, how to be a dictator in a regime. This terminology he uses is freaky. He said, quote, you and me against everybody else. This is a Marxist tactic, and it's not even funny. I hope that more people can see this. And I don't know about you, but I'm not an extremist, okay? It's so extreme for me to want secure borders, for wanting to be able to afford food and a place to live. I mean, I'm basically an anarchist, I guess. You guys have a great rest of your day. That's the end of the show. Bye-bye. I love you. Stay tuned for your forecast and for the top of the hour news from Fox News. We'll be back at it again tomorrow morning, bright and early.